2021. And Dave, please call the roll.
Dan?
Here.
Jill?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
Len? Len, you're on mute.
Here.
Claire?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
And I'm here. All council members present.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. We're going to get started with the Board of Supervisors report. And tonight we have Lena Silberman here to give that report. Go ahead, Lena.
Thank you. So a few things today. There's a new grant opportunity for shuttered venue operators. That is through the U.S. Small Business Administration, and the application period will begin on Friday, August 20th. I will include a link to more information to that in the chat. We're still really trying to get the emergency rental assistance program out there. We continue to have a San Mateo County specific portal that will walk you through the process. The application process has been made a lot easier, and it can be used by both landlords and tenants. We have a business survey that will go live later this week. It basically will have two purposes. The first is it will match your business with whatever federal, state, and local grant opportunities that may be available as they become available. It will also help inform the county on how to tailor our recovery initiatives to best suit the businesses within the county. That survey will be available soon, and then will be guaranteed to be available till August 30th. I don't know if they'll be available past that point or not. And I'll include a link to this and all the other things I talked about in the chat. The local hazard mitigation plan has a workshop meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. to go over the draft of the current plan. You can register online, and I want to also let you know that the comment period for this draft in its entirety will close on August 5th. On COVID, since my last report, the Bay Area, as well as the country, I'm sure you all are aware, has seen a substantial increase in COVID-19 transmission. Safe and effective vaccines continue to be the most powerful tool to protect against COVID-19. During last week, some employers have announced their plans to require vaccinations or regular testing for those who are not vaccinated. And the state health official issued 2 additional orders reinforcing the importance of vaccines or regular testing for employees and visitors in certain healthcare settings regulated by the state. Just in case everyone's aware, all individuals aged 2 and up are, regardless of vaccination status, are required to wear face coverings when indoors. And also, this is something that not too many people know about. None of my friends knew about it, but it is a really helpful tool. You can obtain a California vaccine online record. It's a QR code that you can have in case you lose your hard copy of your vaccine card. Takes like 2 minutes to get. I will include a link on how to do that. I highly recommend doing that. For people who might lose things like me, it's very helpful. And also vaccine appointments. We now have a process you can go through that will, if you go to a public library, they will literally walk you through the process of scheduling a vaccine appointment. So I'll include a link with some information on where you can go to get those resources. And then I included some COVID-19 statistics in my update. I need to go through all of them, but we're definitely seeing an increase. I would not panic because of this increase. It definitely means we need to be more careful. We are seeing that people who are vaccinated are very unlikely to experience symptoms of COVID. And when they do, they are very unlikely to be ones that would make them end up in the hospital. It is vitally important to get vaccinated. But if you want to see those statistics, I can also include them in the chat. And there are just a few other quick events that I don't think I need to waste everyone's time going over, but they're interesting, and I will include information about them in the chat as well. So that is all my updates, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lena. Questions for her? I see that Len has his hand raised, so go ahead, Len.
I think for the local hazards that you announced the opening date, not the closing date for comments.
Oh, is it? That could very well be true. Let me.
That was my comment. It's the 25th, I believe. 20-something is the last date for comments. We'll get clarification.
So that was a test, and you all passed with flying colors, so you can.
Yes, we did.
Okay, and so then Dan, or sorry, yeah, Dan will be next. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Lena. Still troubled about the light shining off of the Fire Station 41 property, and it's very clear the conditions of approval says that no light shall shine off the property, and it seems like everything I've been kind of hearing indirectly is that the planning department is saying that it is meeting the conditions of approval when it in fact is not. So I really think that it'd be great to have Steve Monowitz give some kind of a report to the MCC as to why how is it possible that it can pass the conditions of approval can be determined to be met when it's clear that it's not met. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have let the supervisor know each week that you've made that comment. And I did also let Steve Monowitz know that you made that comment as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we'll go to Claire.
Hi, Lena. I've got two difficult questions for you. Regarding the firehouse lighting, I believe I saw an email probably from Supervisor Horsley's office saying that as far as they were concerned, this was a matter between us and the fire department, that they were no longer going to intervene in any way. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I think that is pretty much exactly what the email said.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was you said last time that there was a delay in making the parallel trail come into existence because there was another project that was in dispute. For what I understand, the other project is the repair of the steps at Surfers Beach. And I remember when those things were put in, there was some sort of provision about who was supposed to take care of them. And I think that the county had agreed to do that. Do we have any documentation about any kind of agreement about that?
So great question. It was before my time, so I had to do a little bit of research. And Chris Hunter hasn't been in office this past week, so I haven't been able to ask him. From what I could find, it seems like a was drafted by the county and then was never signed by Caltrans. So there is no maintenance agreement that has been officially agreed upon. When we talked to Caltrans, it didn't seem like they were aware of that maintenance agreement. So I don't know which part of that may or may not be true. We're still trying to work that out. I can say that we have elevated this situation to the attention of Senator Becker. At least get these projects disconnected from each other so we can work on both of them independently without one hinging on the other.
Any attention you can do to that would be very welcome, because the trail is ready to go and we really need it. It shouldn't be held up for something else. Thank you.
Exactly. And it's a big concern that we're getting closer and closer to the hypothetically wet season, which might impact construction as well.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Lena? I don't see any. So thank you
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much, Lena,
sorry.
for that report. Oh,
Sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand.
okay.
Lena, what's the supply chain issue regarding the soil nails? That's, I read a little blurb in the review, and it said that the supply chain was actually one of the major reasons why they couldn't go forward with the project. Also, the other thing was that the contractors right now are jacking their prices up because it's supply and demand, and there's a huge demand. And that's another reason why the county wanted to wait for a year. Thoughts?
Sorry, I have a bit of a cough going. Not COVID. I got tested, but I'm having trouble. I did hear something about that. I have to go back and talk to Qua from DPW, because the way that it appeared to me was that that was a minor issue over the major issue. I mean, with the parallel trail, we can't do it until the maintenance agreement is signed.
No, I agree. And I'd like to know there's three things. There's that soil nailing supply chain thing. And then there is the idea that the stairs, that other project with the armoring, and I could see how Public Works would want to do that all in the same line. But to Claire's point, we need the trail back. We can't wait another year. And if we really do have to wait another year, can you talk to Co about closing off Murata Road? The residents on Murata Road, if you interview them, they all want it closed off because the craziest stuff comes down. And the Medio Road, what's the road on the south? Anyway, the road on the south where the parking lot is, right? There's a parking lot right there by the south end of the bridge. That makes sense to send, people down that way because there's an actual parking lot right there. But what's happening is they're coming off of Highway 1, and bicyclists are going way too fast, and the cars, sometimes they interact. I mean, they literally moved the barrier by about 5 feet, and they closed off the ability to actually even be able to egress that Miramar Drive detour. I mean, you literally had to move your handlebars to get by. They fixed it within 48 hours, thanks to Len and Co. So, I mean, kudos to that. But if we could close that road off so nobody could go right there, if we have to go in for another year, I'd like that to be addressed.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. I will let the supervisor know. And his name is Qua, just so you know.
Oh, Qua, sorry. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle, for that comment. Any other questions or comments for Lena? Okay, I don't see anything else, so we'll move on. Next will be comments from other government officials, and I see we have Harvey here for the first time in a few weeks. So welcome, Harvey. Looking forward to your report.
Thanks. Sorry I missed the last couple of meetings. I have a couple of public safety comments and a couple of other comments. Attorney General Bonta has responded to the City Council's request for a criminal referral about the shooting of Sandra Harmon last May. And unfortunately, he has declined to take up our request. So we're disappointed that there's been no further action on that. We also had a community meeting at the end of July about public safety issues. There were a number of people from the Midcoast who attended the meeting. It was interesting, to say the least. There was a wide variety of comments about what we can do to improve public safety in the city, and there were even comments about how we could improve it on the Mid-Coast, even though the city doesn't really have any jurisdiction there. So yeah, that was really interesting, and we're going to continue that issue. We have had focus groups that have commented about public safety and trust of the community. That's all been published. The city now has a web page that you can access about public safety to see various reports that the city council has heard, and also the focus group summaries. So if you're interested in public safety, and I think you ought to be, please refer to that webpage. Then on a happier note, we have had our first Make It Main Street event. It's going to be occurring on the first Thursday of every month until December. There's going to be pianos. The merchants are going to be there. There's going to be lots of music, food. It's a chance to show off about how Main Street is recovering. So please, on the first Thursday of every month, make it Main Street. And lastly, on the upcoming city council meeting, we're going to be discussing a short-term rental ordinance. It's not going to be a reading, it's going to be a workshop to get community input about short-term rentals. That's another contentious issue. Lots of people have opinions about how we should or shouldn't regulate short-term rentals. That's Airbnb, VRBO, etc. So if you're interested, please attend that meeting next Tuesday. The full agenda isn't out yet, so I don't know exactly what else is going to be on there, but the short-term rental will be. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Harvey. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions for you, Harvey, tonight. So thank you so much for joining.
Sure.
Any other government officials that would like to speak tonight? I don't see any, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment and announcements. If you have a public comment, it needs to be on an item that's not on tonight's agenda. So not about the wildfire scoping project, not about the website. Go ahead and raise your hand. I see we already have a few hands raised, but just as a reminder, the way to raise your hand is typically under the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. You click on that and then there's a raise hand button right above it. If you don't find it there, you may find it under the participants section of Zoom. And if you're on the mobile app, it's under the More tab. And if you're dialing in from a cell phone, it would be *9. So I will go to the first person who raised their hand, which I believe is Maureen Fleming. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you have up to 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I just want to make everyone aware, if you value natural gas cooking in your home and natural gas heating in your home, the way I absolutely value the natural gas that is coming into my house, and that is because in the earlier years, when I had electric, I used to freeze. My electric bill was exorbitant. So I just want to make everyone here aware, tomorrow, Thursday, 2 p.m., the city of Half Moon Bay, they're having a workshop or whatever it's called, but I'll read this to you. It's a Half Moon Bay homeowner alert. The city of Half Moon Bay is working on an ordinance that will require all homes and businesses to phase out gas and transition to electric only. So I just emphasize, I think it's a good idea if you like natural gas, and if you know people in Half Moon Bay who value value natural gas, the website to go to tomorrow, it's hmbcity.com/electrification. That's Thursday, August 12th, 2 p.m., Building Electrification Workshop. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that announcement.
Thank you, Maureen. I forgot.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we will go to Greg, who has a public comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to make everybody aware of something serious that came out yesterday, not today. regarding COVID. There was a study of 50,000 patients from the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and it showed the effectiveness of the best vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, against Delta variant after 6 months. The effectiveness of Pfizer is 72%. The effectiveness of Moderna is 76%. And the calculations of my colleagues are showing that Johnson & Johnson somewhere between 10 and 15%. What this means is that there's no chance of herd immunity against Delta from vaccines of this low of efficacy. We need over 80 to 90% efficacy lasting. It also means we're probably all going to need booster shots. And I just encourage everybody to read the article we're going to put in the Coastside Buzz tomorrow with a full scientific explanation of how vaccines fade over time and how the new variants are escaping the protection. I think this is going to be an unfortunate development that's going to have to receive national attention. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. And next I'll go to Keith Mangold.
Hello, members of council. My name is Keith Mangold. I reside on Palma in El Granada. And I previously gave a presentation to MCC on the dangers posed by a firestorm in the eucalyptus canopy in Quarry Park. On July 28th, I started a petition to the Board of Supervisors tabling at the El Granada Post Office. Yesterday, I canvassed the block I live on. Today, I've collected over 300 signatures requesting that the Board of Supervisors fund removal of mature eucalyptus from Quarry Park to prevent El Granada from being destroyed by a eucalyptus canopy fire. The response rate to the tabling has been overwhelming, with less than 15 declines and over 300 signatures in support. The response to canvassing was even better. I got 25 signatures from the block I live on, with only 1 decline. So clearly the citizens of El Granada are both informed and concerned about the danger. I've been told that a project is being formed to plan fuel reduction efforts in the Quarry Park canopy. If that is true, I request that the process be both transparent to residents and that there be a strong Midcoast Community Council presence to ensure public input and public communication. It's clear that the residents are committed to removal of mature trees to protect lives and property before it's too late. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keith, for that comment. Next, it looks like Dan has a public comment or an announcement.
Yeah, it's actually about the sound, the volume on tonight's meeting. I'm not sure if it's on my end. There's something that I'm not seeing. I got my volume all the way up to the max, and I've checked every other. I'm wondering, is anybody else having kind of a low volume? And is there anything else? Then I'll bear through it. It must be something on my end, maybe a hidden volume control somewhere. But it seems like I have every.
Everybody's been crystal clear to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been clear for me.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other public comments tonight? Okay, any other announcements from members of the council? Okay, we'll move on then. Next item is consent agenda, but we don't have minutes ready for that. So we will pull that from tonight's agenda. So that means we're moving on to the regular agenda. And our first item on the regular agenda tonight is the El Granada Quarry Park scoping project. This is something that's been brought up in a couple meetings. I don't think we've had a specific agenda item on it, but we've been talking about it under the wildfire topics. And this is something that came out of work that Len Erickson did to initially to find. He actually initially had an idea to find budget to scope out what it would cost and what we could potentially do to help El Granada prepare for wildfire and become more resilient. both the areas of El Granada and Quarry Park. And as a result of this initial discussions, it actually kind of turned into a larger project. And we now, it's a project organized by the Resource Conservation District with input from fire, from the MCC, from parks, a lot of different groups. We have tonight Sheena Sidhu from the San Mateo Resource Conservation District, who's going to be introducing the project and talking a little bit about what it means. We'll follow that with, I believe, some comments from Len, and then we will have public comment and members of the council comment as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sheena.
Thanks, Michelle. And thanks everybody for having me back. So as Michelle said, we've talked about this a little bit before, the scoping project. I'm happy to be invited today to speak a little bit more in detail about it, and also hear Len and I have been having some talks too, and it'd be great to have all of that brought with to the MCC meeting. So I also wanted to take this opportunity. I gave a little bit last time I was here, a little bit of an update on the other projects that we have going. So with the $1 million grant we got from the Coastal Conservancy to do some field work along the fire roads in Quarry Park. So that's a partnership with county parks. There'll be over 100 acres. Very excited about that. We're going to get started on that later this summer or early fall. That was one of the rapid response grants that was funded for that. So we quickly wrote that in the spring. The proposal for that was quickly funded and approved. And so right now we're just trying to figure out how we can get the very first piece of this puzzle done, which would probably be a little bit with county parks crews, and we're trying to find some contractors who are in high demand all over the state to do some work, and then we'll get started in earnest next spring after the winter to remove some hazardous trees and work on that shaded field break along the fire roads. So I wanted to just provide that recap and update for that. And also, you had your chipper program earlier this spring, but just giving a little update on that as well, that we've finished over 20 neighborhoods with a little over 35 days of chipping. We have a few more events happening across the county. So it's just encouraging to me that the program really grew this year. The communities are getting together just like years that are getting together to create that defensible space and become more fire resilient. And then the last thing I want to touch on that is linked to the Quarry Park project is that we have, as of early July, we got started on our forest health grant. This is a $2.5 million grant we got funded through CAL FIRE to do over 400 acres at Wunderlich and Huddart County Parks, as well as some at a Girl Scout camp near Butteville. And so that just got started in July. We've done about 30 acres, 10 more in progress, and we're slowly making some progress on that. So that'll be a 2-year project. And we have not done a forest health grant that size in the county for a long time. So I'm really proud of that. And I just bring that up to show that we are having some other big projects happening. There's other communities that also have need. And it's a really good partnership that RCD has with county parks to work on these types of projects. That's a little recap. So let's move on to the scoping project. So what's the scoping project? As Michelle was saying, Len brought up the idea of a scoping project on like, how can we make the whole area more fire resilient? So when we're looking at the landscape, we have to remember that it's not just Quarry Park, it's El Granada and the adjacent areas together. About 3/4 of the eucalyptus are in Quarry Park, but about 1/4 are on private properties within the community as well. So that's why we've got to look at everything together. And as you are all very familiar, there's multiple concerns that are happening, right? So we have Quarry Park is a major concern. The folks in Upper El Granada have some of their own specific concerns because they're way up higher on the hill with just that one road down to escape if there's anything to happen. We have the medians that are concerned, hazardous trees and just removing the trees, the eucalyptus on the empty lots. So we know that there's a lot going on. So what's the best way to tackle all of these things? There's so many things we can do. There's so much we can do. So the idea would be to hire a consultant that could actually help us map out these projects and scope them out. So on one end, you would have the large, let's just say remove all the eucalyptus in Quarry Park. How much would that cost? What kind of time frame are we looking at? What potential funding sources could be? Like, what would that project look like? We can get an estimated project cost, a bit of a project description, and that would be one thing. And then what are some other things we could do if the concern is more about fuel breaks? And so we could look at that, what that would look like, and how much that would cost. If another project that we want to focus on is doing something with those empty lots, like what would that project look like? And there's a lot of things into that too, right? Because there's some absent landowners, there's some residents that are not as, or I guess not residents, but landowners there too, right? So there's some more questions we'd have to pull out of that and see like, what could we do to resolve that? And then we'd go through what all the concerns are, and it'd be a suite of projects. And then from there, we could pull like, what can we tackle in the near term, long term? I'm just saying, like, what if it is impossible to remove all the eucalyptus, or it is just such a long-term project and we want to do other things in the middle of that, knowing that that might be like a couple of decades long project, like what could we do, right? So this would, instead of just throwing out these ideas, we'd actually have the suite of projects to pull from and know. And then if you remember when RCD, I believe it was Kellex that spoke too, was trying to explain as well that specific projects match specific funds. So I believe that there's some discussions happening about the FEMA mitigation funds, right? So we can match the project that would best match the mitigation funding with that project. Then there's some funds that are under fire prevention. There's some projects that are better suited for that. There's some that are considered forest health. I don't really consider the eucalyptus a forest we want to keep, but perhaps there would be some way to say, like, we would be improving that forest by this. Again, I'm just kind of giving examples, like we could replace it or something, right? So like there's ways that we would see how it would match. I'm hoping that that's making sense. And so what we're doing to do that, I appreciate, Michelle, that you're saying that RCD is leading it, but I feel like this is a collective effort that everybody is doing together. So the funding is going through RCD, and the reason for that is that's approximately $75,000. And once you hit above a $50,000 threshold, the county does require that there's some accountability and procurement policy. So that's why RCD volunteered that we could house the funding for it. But other than that, we're working collectively. So what we're doing is we're having a committee that's going to be working with this consultant, closely with this consultant, to develop this scoping project. So we're not just going to hire a consultant and say, go at it, right? There's a lot of nuances that this community is very familiar with that we want to make sure to get addressed. So the committee is being made of MCC members. So right now, Michelle is representative for MCC, myself for RCD. Lena is participating a lot, and so representing the county. Austin Seeley and Gary Silva from County Fire and CAL FIRE. Hannah Ormshaw from County Parks, and then additionally Nicholas Calderon, the director of County Parks, has been participating as well. I don't know if he'll be at every committee meeting, but he's been participating as well. And Kellex Nelson, the director of RCD. So we collectively have that group that's going to be the committee, and then the consultant would be part of that discussion. And what I'm planning, what I think the plan would be, and again, the committee might decide to do something more or less frequently, but we can hire the consultant as early as this fall, and then every week, every 2 weeks, we can decide. We would have regular meetings with the consultant to really dig into what are those different projects. And that's where we can really have those deep discussions about the nuances. Like, what really is the concern about for the folks that are in the upper part of El Granada Boulevard, for example, right? What's the real concerns about the medians? Can there be something to do about the empty lots, and and then like the big question is for Quarry Park. I know that's like the big one. That might be a couple of discussions we have. And so with that, we want to make sure that there's community engagement. So that's where the MCC can interact, and you can have discussions as well. We can figure out what we can do to make sure that the community feels engaged, as Keith was saying earlier, and I really appreciate that. I am planning that we would have regular updates as well. And so I'm hoping that feels satisfying about how we would make sure that the community is engaged. in formulating this scoping project. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. And if there's some detail that I missed that I can elaborate on when there's questions, I can answer that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sheena. I'm going to go around first to the council for any sort of clarifying questions or comments. And I will start with Len and then go around to the rest of the council. Len, you're on mute.
Just a quick, one quick question to start off, and then move to other council people as well. One of the major risks when we talk about the eucalyptus trees as a major problem, which they are, but the concern is, especially for El Granada itself, the presence of the fire there. And most recently, in the Dixie fire, we've had another community, Greenville, which has been overtaken by wildfire. And if you look at these communities, none of them have eucalyptus trees in them. They're just overtaken by a fast moving wildfire. And the issue that occurs when you look at the residential pattern is they're just regular houses in blocks, fence by fence, house by house. And really, they're overcome very quickly. And so for El Granada, the community, as opposed to Quarry Park, once the fire begins to get here, there's plenty of fuel available in all of our private houses. I mean, we really have not, the houses that are arrayed more in the suburban layout, block by block, are really not subject to close review by the fire marshals, and you'll see many large trees and other things close to them. And when you look at these communities that have been overtaken by fire, it's clear that they were really in that same pattern. So there's an additional problem to consider, that is, all of the private residences of El Granada probably have, they are not designed to be fire safe as you would for a house that might be built further out in the woods and try to maintain 100-foot distance and separation. So I see that as another important concern to list. You can go ahead to others, Michelle.
Sheena, did you want to respond to that at all?
I think that's a good comment, and that's exactly what I want to make sure that there's community engagement. So that's a really good thought. I feel like that might be a discussion and an element of home hardening and what can we do to help residents as well. So I think we should definitely include that in our thoughts and discussions.
Great, thank you. Other members of the council have any questions or initial comments?
I'll just, sorry.
You can go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, in response to Len, actually a lot of the houses here are using hardy board or other cement siding rather than wood. Sure, the frames are wood, but and the fire department has been having trainings on clearing defensive zones and the like. So I think that is a parallel process which is already happening. I personally am in the minority. I do not want to see Quarry Park eucalyptus or any of the other eucalyptus around here clear cut. It needs to be thinned, but I definitely do not want to see it clear cut. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Next, Greg.
I guess I would have a comment that may or may not, it doesn't really relate to Sheena, but the vacant lots that Len has so well documented. Apparently the fire code, this was pointed out by Susan Casey and some of the wildfire warriors. We don't have a code that allows the fire department to issue abatement orders on eucalyptus if they're healthy and live. I've reached out both to a fire marshal and to a member of the CAL FIRE Board of Directors, and I haven't gotten any reply on the idea of changing the fire code. So I hope we don't have to wait for a consultant who won't be hired to the fall and won't reach conclusions till the spring to get a change in the fire code. And so I just put that out there. I know it's one of our existing issues, but it seems like a simple thing like the tree removal or a permit process that we should be able to take action on. And then finally, there's this issue of what's a real risk. And Dave brought it up, and Len has brought it up a few times before, How do you determine the significance or reality of the risks we face? A lot of the focus to date has been on thinning and fire breaks, but if we really are at risk for a crown fire, none of that's going to help. So I think Len has proposed, and I'll let him and others speak to this, that we utilize some fire modeling techniques to determine what really might happen and how bad it would be. Because the sense of the research that I've gotten, and I know Keith Mangold has done the same, when you look at the Oakland Hills fire, and you look at a bunch of the other fires, the canopy fire is the thing we really have to worry about, because the ground fires are much more contained. And in fact, CAL FIRE has put out a bunch of ground fires in Quarry Park. So I'm hoping that the consultant will have the tools to evaluate the reality of the risks of things like canopy fires, because I think we really do need to revegetate. And Dave, I'm not going to call that clear cutting. We need to revegetate back to native species, or I hate to say what is potentially going to happen. And yes, the homes are the fuel in a lot of these fires. I've got hardy board, but I don't think a lot of people do. And Michelle Dragoni can speak at great length about how you need to vent your house differently and all the cert things that you need to do. But there is a concern that once it gets started, the homes are the fuel.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Next, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sheena, for your input tonight. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm on the okay, good. So I guess you're aware of the work it sounds like it's going to be done at Quarry Park soon, the shaded fuel break. I thought some of that was already done. I thought some of it was already done. Can you tell us what you know about like the scheduling of all this?
Sure. So there's ongoing maintenance happening at Quarry Park all the time. This one is going to be a partial maintenance of the governor's project, fuel breaks that are along the fire roads, plus an expansion out to 200 feet. Before it was only 100 feet. So it'll be an expansion out. And the governor's project did not target hazard trees. So we'll also be targeting hazard tree removal as well. And so that a little bit will be started this fall, but it will be starting in earnest with a large scale contractor in the spring.
In the spring.
So there might be some other, so there might be some other maintenance work that's happening at county parks. I can't speak to that. That's like county parks would know some more details about that, and that's the project that we're working and partnering on.
Okay, and do you know if are they going to be applying herbicide on other invasive species besides eucalyptus?
And you always stump me with these questions that I need to have read the whole the management plan. I will do that next time. And so all this work is being done under the vegetation management plan that County Parks already has. And one of the reasons this project was approved so quickly, and again, like I can't stress enough, like we applied for this in the spring and we got the funding. Usually it's like a year to get funding and then like another year or two to get permitting and then to get the project. So we're doing things incredibly fast for you guys. And it's all done under the County Parks Vegetation Management Plan, and it's already permitted, and that's why we can just go right into it. And I don't have all the details off the top of my head, but it is available online.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if you heard, I made a request that if there can be some like before and after photo documentation of the work. Did that ever get? Oh, we did. Oh, you heard.
We will be definitely doing that. I mean, and actually, in fact, with one of our deliverables, the granting agency is requesting that too.
Oh,
so it
great.
will be done.
And the last question, the committee meetings with the consultants, will they be open to the public?
We were planning not to, so that we could have like more like dialogue, and part of it, I mean, frankly, is relationship building and just like building it with the same group. And so, but I do also hear if you're suggesting like we don't want to make sure that there's engagement. So I don't have an answer to that. Maybe the committee can talk together, or maybe MCC if you collectively have a suggestion on how we can make sure that the questions are getting integrated. Also, we don't even know who the consultant is yet, but maybe the consultant could come to a meeting. I don't know. but like we will try to make sure that it feels that that there's the level of engagement that the community is hoping for.
Thank you very much, Sheena.
Does that sound okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you for those questions, Dan, and for the answer, Sheena. Next, I'll go to Len.
Yes, a question in terms of the fire behavior modeling. I wanted to, I guess, announce this to the council as a whole. The fire safe meetings are held once a month. The one was held today, this morning, and they've had some really excellent presentations to look at where the science goes with respect to both fire behavior modeling and other tracking ones. There were some excellent presentations. So as soon as they post the video for that, I'll send out a notice, because I think there's at least 2 presentations that are really worth listening to. The second one, in terms of hazard trees, could you define what that means?
Sure, we should actually get the arborist Dan Krug here, because he'll be the one that's going to be helping to assess it. But the trees that are dead or dying, and that's the same ones that's like under that hazard tree exemption that we collectively passed to, and also any trees that are at risk to fall into the fire road or affect emergency personnel or emergency access.
So to be clear, then, we heard one member of the public talking about the signature gathering he's doing, but that was explicitly about very large eucalyptus trees, and those are not hazard trees unless they're not considered healthy. Is that right?
For this, so are you talking about this project?
Yes.
And for the project in Quarry Park?
The hazard trees that you mentioned in Quarry Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that, are you asking like what's the size of the tree?
Well, I think that the point raised, just as a case in point. So remember that the community is saying, I have signatures to remove. People would like to see a lot of the very large trees removed, and that doesn't fall under hazard trees, and those are difficult, and expensive to remove. So is that the example of something that you would undertake, not necessarily to clear cut, as Dave is not in favor of, but to certainly make major inroads there?
So the signatures for removing trees in Quarry Park, I think I may have misunderstood that. I thought it was in the community.
No, I believe those were in Quarry Park.
Is the way Quarry Park. Okay. Yeah. If there's, I really think that this is a question that's best for Dan Krug, because he's going to be making the final determination. He's an arborist. I'm not, for what hazard tree is. So that's what I'll say, that we can defer to him. But it's healthy. It's the dead or dying trees. It's looking at unhealthiness, and then also if they impact the fire road.
Okay, so the county project in the medians, the sample project on a small scale, was in at least particular places to remove all eucalyptus, regardless of size. But you're saying that there's no effort currently on the books to take on Quarry Park at the level of the large trees and to remove those in any number. It's a question.
If they're hazard trees.
Well, so some people might say they're all hazard trees. That's
okay. Then that might be the nuance that Dan Krug would be better to answer. And as for the median project, I am not involved in that, so I can't really speak to that.
Well, the median project, I guess not the one that's being done now, but the medians themselves are part of your effort, right?
No.
They're
I mean, if you want it for the scoping project, yes, but
yes,
like
the scoping project.
Oh, scoping, sure, yeah.
And in looking at the problem to remove the scoping trees, one of the things I've heard said is in many of these projects, you need to have matching funds. Do you expect you'll come to a point, or is this one of the things you'll look at as to whether to ask the community as regards the trees in El Granada to have matching funds for some of the grants you pursue?
Matching funds, if that's a requirement, we would always look into that. I think that's too many steps ahead. Like, we don't even know what grant agency it is right now, but I'm glad that you understand the concept that we do need to sometimes have matching funds. But we'd have to know what the project is and what the funding is and what we're looking for. I mean, matching funds is always good. I guess if I'm going to speak generally to the idea of matching funds are always good because it shows an investment and an interest by the community or stakeholders in the project, and they're more likely to get funded. It usually gets more points when a grant is ranked.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next I'll go to Claire.
Okay, since we're making comments as well as questions, I'll make a couple of really quick comments. As I listen to you talk, it all sounds good, but then when you say, oh, maybe we can start looking at this or start doing something about it next spring, then automatically the wheels start turning and I think, oh, but the fire season is going to happen before next spring. So I understand why it takes some time to do some planning and to do this right. And actually, I'm glad that you're going to take some time to do some planning and get things right, because I think it's really complicated. I don't think it's like we just go in there and cut down trees. I think somebody brought up a hardening of the infrastructure of the homes and everything. I think that's a really good place to start working that doesn't involve trees. I also think that the perennial problem with evacuation and transportation and emergency alerts is also another place we need to be putting efforts, and that doesn't involve trees. I understand we need to do something with the trees, but I also worry about climate change, and I worry about the fact that in order to keep our fog and whatnot that we have here that reduces our risk, we need to keep a certain amount of vegetation here. And it's hard to redo vegetation in a meaningful way in the middle of a drought. So we need to make some use of what we still have. So it's very complicated. There's a lot of competing ways of looking at things, and I'm glad you're going to be taking the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Claire. I think we've heard from most everyone on the council except Jill. Jill, did you have any comments at this or questions at this time?
Just one clarifying. So for the medians, will there be some ideas of what's going to be done with the medians after they're cleared? Or what?
I don't know.
Sheena, you're on mute. Yeah.
Oh, is that better?
So
yes.
Will your consultant actually have ideas for how to cut down the eucalyptus and maybe reuse them on the medians?
So I think that's a good question to bring up in the committee, right? It's like, what do we want the consultant to do? Like our ideal I'm just, I guess I'm thinking out loud. I can't speak for the whole committee and everybody, but like, what if we tell the consultant, like, our ideal project would be removing the eucalyptus and the medians and making sure that they're rehabilitated to whatever degree we want. And we're very concerned about what's going to happen with the material. Like maybe that's what we say. Like, what would a project like that look like?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Next, I'm going to go to the members of the public for comments on this topic. And everyone who, please raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I see we have a couple of hands raised right now. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. So I'm going to start with Susan Casey.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Sheena, for all that information. Really, really quickly done. I've been taking notes and I'm going to try to read off of some of them. I'm specifically concerned about, some of the things that were talked about regarding community engagement. And one of the things that Greg brought up was that in the ordinance within the Coastside Fire Protection District, they don't have anything for removal of eucalyptus trees specifically in their ordinances on private properties. But they do have an ordinance that is 2019-03, which there's a section in there for removal of ground fuel, ladder fuel, etc. And I had mentioned before in the previous meeting that I had been in touch and we had 8 parcels that qualified for that. Initial letters went out and then follow-up did not take place. And it's been over 3 months now with no word back from Coastside Fire Protection District. I tried to reach out to the fire marshal's office. They said that the issue had been sent over to the board. So I did write a specific board member 6 weeks ago. I wrote the whole board of directors 3 weeks ago, have not heard anything back from them. And so when we're talking about community engagement and how to get the community involved, I think it's really important that there is some kind of follow-up with our agencies. And another example that I'd like to give is Len Erickson and I were in touch with each other after the last Midcoast Community Council, and there had been plans to walk El Granada Boulevard and see, along with Austin Seeley and potentially Nicholas Calderon. Len was going to be attending. I asked if I could, and Len thought that I would be able to, and nothing's happened with that. And I haven't heard anything about that. And so that's another thing that supposedly had been planned, but no follow-up along with that. Another item to mention is the 2019 Governor's Project. You referenced that. However, there was a huge swath of land along El Granada Boulevard that abutted, about 200 feet away from El Granada Boulevard. And that was supposed to have an understory clearing during the 2019 Governor's Project. They never got to that. The Parks Department didn't put it on their 5-year fire reduction projects for parks. And so there's a lot of things that I see that are slipping through the cracks. And when you talk about community engagement, I have a big question mark there. I'm really trying to engage with these agencies and with various people, and I'm not getting answers, and I'm not getting, the feedback from them. And I feel like my voice is not being heard.
Thank you for that comment, Susan. I really appreciate that. A lot of good points you've made there. It's been brought up a couple times now about the Coastside Fire and the vacant lot issue. So I have an update that I was going to share later on during council activity, but I can go ahead and share it now because I think it's pretty relevant to this topic. And what it was Austin Seeley had mentioned on a meeting actually for the scoping project that we were on, that they are working on a project to contact property owners of the vacant lots and do a one-time removal of large vegetation. And so I actually asked Austin if he could speak at a future meeting, but he instead sent me kind of a summary of what they're doing. So I will go ahead and just read this out loud. And then, I think it'll be of interest to many people. So this is what he said today. We are going through the district and gathering data on vacant lots that are located in Coastside Fire Protection District that are also within SRA moderate, SRA high, SRA very high, or LRA very high fire severity hazard zones that border residential lots with homes. I have a list of these lots and have been going through and performing inspections to determine their current state. Correction notices will be sent to property owners en masse to allow them the chance to clear their lots. Another round of inspections will commence to determine the final list of who is compliant and who is not. Once the list has been completed, we can move forward by analyzing the types of work and contractor quotes that would include weed whacking, brush removal, limbing up trees 6 feet above the ground, and chipping. The cost of this would be passed on to the property owner, similar to how the weed abatement program works. The idea would be to remove and clear out ground cover and dense brush. Saplings would be included in this list of quotes, but mature tree removal will not be something we are looking into. Once all this has been wrapped up, it will be passed along to the board for final decision. We are currently working simultaneously on inspecting lots, as well as the specifics of what we will require the contractors to do. This is very much a work in progress. This is a one-time operation and will not be performed annually. In a perfect world, these lots will be cleared of dense brush this year, and next year they will be automatically enrolled in the weed abatement program for future maintenance. If the lots are mowed every year, then the brush will not have a chance to grow back to previous levels. So that's the update that I have there. Next, I will go to Maureen Fleming with a comment.
Yes, I do have a few comments, not necessarily connected in thought, but a few weeks ago, there was an article in the paper and I shared it with the council, and I think it said that PG&E had 30 billion to 60 billion, I think, dollars they were allocating to put utilities underground. And I was thinking, I previously at one of these Zoom meetings, I thought we were identified as a real higher risk area. And I just wonder if it would help if someone like Lena or Sheena and their agencies could write a letter to PG&E and say, could some of that money be allocated to El Granada Boulevard, for instance? Because they say that the sparks are coming off these utility poles. And so that's just one thought. And then my other thought, when I hear talk about consultants, the only thing I really think is sometimes I think consultants, they're very expensive. And then you say, what do you really get at the end of it? When maybe for that money, trees could just be cut. And the other thing is fires don't discriminate. Like if it's eucalyptus, well, then the forest fire will continue. But if it's a big pine, no, we'll leave that alone. So I notice everyone even clearing up here, they're taking out the eucalyptus, but then I see major greenery that if there were a fire, boy, those fir or pine trees or whatever they are, that they would certainly torch up. And then someone here tonight mentioned talk of expanding fire breaks from 100 feet to 200. I think that's a great idea. And my last comment is, and I'm really thinking occasionally some of the, not necessarily even the empty lots, but even a homeowner, I'm thinking on one of the curves up here, that they never have maintained their property. And it's got about 20 or 30 it's kind of unimaginable how many eucalyptus trees are squeezed on this lot. And I just think, a homeowner like that should be approached. It's kind of treacherous. So, and what I was thinking on some of this, that at some point, maybe a nice letter to homeowners could go out and say, we will be willing as an agency to take trees off your property. We'll put a lien on your property at $1,500 per tree. And then when they finally sell the lot, which now these lots up here go for $350 or $450, the county would get their money at that point. So that's all I have, and thank you.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts, Maureen. Next, I'll go to Graham.
Okay, thanks. I'll mute myself. First comment, just adding to what Maureen was saying, the PG&E and burying the lines. One maybe pertinent fact there is that Upper El Granada Boulevard from 400 upwards has been the only place that has had the PSPS power cutoffs on several occasions over the last 2 years. So there's been nowhere else on the coast side has had power cuts, but just the area from 400 up. So, I mean, there have been wider ones as well, but there have been several occasions where it is just the upper part of El Granada Boulevard that have been cut off. So that seems to me like that's, PG&E is actually recognizing that there is a bigger problem there, and therefore it should be possible to get PG&E to talk to it. But I realize we're talking about Sheena's things here, so that Sheena, the plan for where the work is going to be done in Quarry Park with the current projects. I've asked a couple of times to get more detailed information about this. This is because with the governor's project, when that happened, yes, we were given a map which showed that large amounts around us were going to be, there was going to be work done, and then that work never happened. So it's not just getting a map that says this is where it's going to be cut, but where are they going to start the work? And if the money runs out, which bits aren't going to get done? As Susan had said, that the original governor's project scope was never completed. And as far as we've seen, we haven't seen any evidence that there's a plan in place to actually do that completion. And it was obviously regarded as being a state priority. And now it seems it's not a county priority.
Okay, thank you, Graham, for this comment. I see Susan has her hand raised again. Susan, we can go back to you briefly. You're still on mute.
Thank you so much. And I'll make this very brief. Michelle, I appreciate that. Can you provide a link to Austin Seeley's letter that you just wrote or read? You know, if you could have that in.
Yeah, I can figure out how to, yeah, I can probably post it on our website. I'll just confirm that with him that that's okay. But yeah, I mean, I read it out loud, so I think I can just put it, copy it into a document and put it on the site.
And then I have just a couple of other comments regarding what he said in that letter and some of the things that Greg had said and what Graham had said. You know, what I was talking about earlier in my comment was strictly, let's just see if we can get the ground fuel taken care of. You know, for whatever reason, we haven't even been able to get the ground fuel taken care of in this Quarry Park area along El Granada Boulevard and on these private lots that are not developed. I haven't even started mentioning, Greg's been talking about this for quite some time about let's start to progress this. Let's get a transition plan in place so that, you know, ground fuel will be a thing of the past to talk about. That will be all completely done. And then we get to move up to the next level of, you know, 6-inch in diameter trees, you know, then larger mature trees. We're not even at that point to be able to talk about a transition plan, let alone talk about what would even be replacing the trees that would be gone. To Dave Olson's point, you know, we don't want to necessarily clear cut without a plan in place so that we have something else that we know is going to be replacing that. And, you know, and if we can't, and if in Austin's letter, if we can't even begin to talk about doing this annually with the latest UN report out regarding climate change, you know, we've passed that tipping point. We are there. This has got to be done on an annual basis. And apparently, you know, I can really sympathize with Coastside Fire Protection District because, you know, they probably don't have the head count for this. And why don't they have the head count for this? That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for those comments. And I don't know, I have to admit, I don't know a whole lot about this, but was my understanding that there's already in existence a weed abatement program for vacant lots that is done annually. And what he was saying is that this additional project is tackle some of the larger fuel, however, not the large trees, would be just a one-time program. But I totally hear you, and it's something we can talk about, what we could potentially do, a letter that we could write or something in the future to try to encourage this to be done either more frequently and then in addition for larger fuel, larger trees.
I'd like to make a clarification. This is different than weed abatement. What I had been told by the fire marshal's office is that weed abatement is a completely separate project from this other ordinance. It is ordinance 2019-03. There's a section in there that specifically deals with these lots that are non-occupied with eucalyptus on them. It's not a matter of just mowing. It's a matter of going in and doing another type of fuel removal. And so this is this ordinance that doesn't have an annual component to it yet.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. The weed
Mhm.
abatement is an annual project, which is separate from this.
Right.
Right, yeah. Okay. Okay, any other public comments? We will go back to the council just for any additional comments then. So public comment on this topic is closed. I'll go to Len first, who has his hand raised.
Well, first, I wanted to respond to Susan, who asked about the conversation I had relative to walking on El Granada Boulevard. But once the committee was formed with you and Sheena and others on it, I'm not getting response from those people. So I think you've created sort of a two-level connection there currently. So that'll have to wait till down the road. The second is, as far as fire behavior models, I think, do you plan to use whatever models are currently on the books to have the consultant work from? That's for Sheena.
Sure, we can ask them to, if we want to include the modeling. I think though that the project is to identify different projects that we would do. So if the modeling informs developing the projects, then I guess that makes sense to include. But on the other hand, like it seems like this community has done a lot of like you are all very involved and like have identified these, like, to me, like very clearly specific projects. Like, what do we do in Quarry Park? What do we do in Upper El Granada? Like, I keep saying these over and again, but like there's these distinct projects that I see have already emerged. We can dig into those a little bit more. So if the modeling informs that, I guess that's something we could request them to do. But on the other hand, might it be necessary? And I only bring that up because I hope we're not asking them to do modeling, because I think that's a different project. But if we would ask them to do, like, incorporate some like the existing information, then that would make sense if it makes sense to informing the project design.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Len. Greg?
Yeah, Sheena, I understand for the budget we have, we couldn't ask them to do modeling. But I think we might ask them to endorse a methodology that would include modeling in a subsequent project. And it does seem like we're going to have to do something because we can't seem to get people to believe that crown fires are a risk. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're not, but we could at least request that that be an issue. And the other thing is, I want to thank you for coming here and taking a whole bunch of questions that really aren't in your area of responsibility, but I believe you lived up here, so you know what we're talking about. I guess one of the things I would definitely like to see out of the consultant is a recommendation on governance, and that would allow you and Kellex and a whole bunch of other people to not have to take these questions, because it would be clear who was responsible for governance when it came to Midcoast fire protection. Okay. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it should be Coastside Fire Protection District, but they don't seem that responsive so far. So at any rate, I would like the consultant to definitely speak to the issue of focused governance. Thanks.
Yes, and that's something I brought up at our initial meeting. I tried at that first meeting to represent all of the points of view that I've heard from both members of the council and members of the community up to this point, and agreed that governance is important and something we need to look at. Next,
Yeah,
I'll go to Dan. Oh, go ahead, Sheena, if you'd like to respond.
Just very quick to what Greg is saying, that could be another one of the projects that gets scoped, is if you do want to do deeper modeling, right? If you think that's going to help to inform, and it wouldn't be covered in this scope with the budget, but that could be another project that gets scoped along with all like the field management ones. An idea, we can discuss that further.
You're talking about the fire behavior modeling?
Yes.
Or the governance piece? Okay, yeah.
Yes. Oh, and the governance one, I think that's a larger discussion, but I appreciate that thought.
Okay, Dan?
Yes. Just wanted to say that, you know, oftentimes I go up to Golden Gate Park, and in Golden Gate Park, you don't notice them. There are a lot of eucalyptus trees. You don't really notice them. I can't give you a percentage but they're blended in with other trees. And I'm saying this because and also I've walked Quarry Park quite a few times. There are a lot of cypress trees hidden inside the forest, and a lot of them aren't doing very good because of all the competition with the eucalyptus. But early on, I said that we should start as soon as possible and plan a phased clear cut of the complete park, and then replant with appropriate new trees. I guess I'm now kind of saying that maybe we should not necessarily clear cut. The last time I walked through, I think it's just painfully obvious that there's so many small trees that seem like they get in the way of others, and the big trees, that it seems painfully obvious that you can do a lot of work without necessarily call it clear cutting. You could reduce a lot of and as far as the the use of the logs, I was hiking in Purisma Creek. I think it's the main trail to the right. I think it's the first bridge. You go underneath this bridge, and it was a creative use of logs that essentially made a retaining wall, and then it's supporting one end of the bridge. So I think that actually this is a question for Sheena, and forgive me if it's not it's not your responsibility, but I'm just curious if maybe you could throw some insight. Whatever, certainly there'll be a lot, if whatever work is done in Quarry Park, there will be a lot of logs that will need to be, either chipped or paid to be removed. The thought of using some of these logs for, right on the side of the road to sit, benches, just kind of scatter them out, leave a lot. I've seen a lot of areas where they just leave logs, but also use them for maybe some, retaining walls of some kind, or, erosion control or something. And then possibly, I don't know, possibly could there be even the subtlest kind of creating more kind of usable space, or is that something, carving in, changing the geography of any part of the mountain, that's kind of like taboo? I'm not sure.
There is so much material. So Dan, you're right that there's plenty of material to do things if we want to. So if you want to do all of those, if we had like a limitless budget, we could do everything because there's so much material. Most of the material where we can, we would likely chip it. I'm just speaking broadly on like basic forest management for that. We would likely chip it. It would help with erosion control, and we'd also have to remove some of it. Some of it's a lot. One of the other things that RCD is doing, aside that I'm actually working with the program manager for the agricultural program at RCD, is there a way to compost it? And we don't quite have the exact facilities to do that here, but what could that look like? There's also some ideas about using that and putting that into agricultural land to help with, I don't know exactly the technical term for it, but it helps with the structuring of the land with the terraces as well. So there's discussions about what we could do if we had so much material. And if you wanted to get creative, maybe that could also be like an educational thing where you want to do something retaining, do something artistic. There's a lot of options. And I think there is an opportunity to get creative with it and see if there's something that could reduce our costs. Because when Rich Sampson did those really rough estimates about how much it would cost if we wanted to remove all the trees, he said between $150 to $200 million. Part of that was just like to remove the material would be very costly. So I think there's opportunity there to explore that.
Wow, I'm so happy to hear that. I've been kind of asking for that, and I haven't really got much of a response. So from others, not from you, Sheena. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing and your response. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I mean, those are no promises, but those are ideas, and I think there's lots of things that we could do.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Len.
Yeah, Sheena, I wonder if you could speak about the length of time you consider this effort to be taking on. Are you thinking of planning things that would go for the next 5 years or for the next 10 years? And how large a budget do you think you want to work with? I know the consultant is supposed to bring that into particular focus, but you must have some idea of the scope that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's long-term planning. I think one of the anchor thoughts is one of the things that we've heard is we want to do a large-scale removal of the trees. And again, that might not be the absolute solution, but that's one thing that's been discussed. Let's price it out, like how much that costs. And then from that I believe that would be the one that would take the longest, right? And so that would build the scale of it. And I believe when Rich Sampson was talking about it, that was, I think he had said 20 years, right? So I would say that would be like an anchoring end, and then we could build it too. But I want to also like build some flexibility into things, right? Things change, if values change, if different funding opportunities change. So I think that would be like the long-term project, and then there'd be other projects. And in that, just to be clear, like in that suite of projects, we're not going to be like outlining this needs to be done first, this one needs to be next, this one needs to be done in 2014 or like 2024. Like we're not going to, that's not what this project will really do. It will be able to provide the information that the community could start discussing that, right? So we're not going to be building like a timeline in that respect.
Okay. So finally, with respect to fire modeling, it's not, there's very detailed modeling and future looking, and I think the fire safe meeting is looking at things like that. But I'm talking about basics, like it's not clear to me whether the county, and looking at what they might do in Quarry Park, is more concerned about the fire migrating down into Miramar or on the other side into El Granada Boulevard and beyond in the lands there. And that relate in part to wind patterns and things like that. So there's some very basics that influence where you want to put your emphasis as well. And that's why I think the model should be clear.
I see.
But thanks.
Okay, Sheena only has a few more minutes. Thanks. And so I'm going to try to get to everyone on the council at least one more time before we have to close this item at 8:30. So next I'll go to Claire.
Okay, well, I was going to spare you this, but since I'm going to piggyback off of Dan's comments, my new dining room chairs came today finally, and you can sort of see right here. The reason I'm telling you this is because they're made out of eucalyptus. So I don't know the whole story about what kind of eucalyptus, but it apparently can be done.
Thanks.
I'll actually say a quick thing to that, Claire, that, yeah, that's one of the things we kind of were like talking about, like, is there a market for this? You know, eucalyptus isn't always marketable because the way that the tree grows is not always consistent. But we were just like joking around, right? Just like amongst other folks, the county parks and other staff, people on my staff, about like, what could we do? Like if there was a market or somebody wanted to start a business and was willing to do it, like there'd be plenty of material. So I wish it could be
just
a more
to that
feasible
point,
market.
I actually saw an article a while back about wood pellets. So apparently in Europe and in other places, a lot of people use wood pellets for like these fuel burning stoves that they have. And they don't currently make them out of eucalyptus, and most of them I think are done somewhere on the East Coast. But if we could find someone to buy the wood and turn them into these wood pellets that are used, I mean, it's not the most environmentally friendly thing to be burning fuel, but if they're going to be done anyway, I would think that the wood pellets from eucalyptus would be pretty flammable. So anyway.
No, I actually, if I can just take a moment to say, like, we are trying to think of these creative solutions. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of vegetation that needs to be managed. There's this discussion. I'm not going to go into it today. This is like, I would be here for another hour, but the question of developing biochar and developing a biochar facility or having a transportable biochar machine, and what that would do is it would use that material and turn it into fuel that could be used, and it would be a product. You know, if we were maybe in this areas where there's like a lot of material that could be used, like it might be something viable that somebody would do that as a business plan. Here, it's just, we're just on the cusp that it might not be, but it might. So there's discussions going on, or as the prices of this machinery comes down, like we could. So I'm just sharing that because I'm happy to hear that there's some excitement about it. And also, like, we are trying to think creatively. There is some of this long-term thinking, creative thinking, like this novel thinking that we're trying to engage with as well.
Great.
I can hang on for one more minute. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We haven't heard from Dave or Jill. I'm not sure if they have anything else to say.
Nothing from me.
Okay.
Well, I just typed mine into the chat. So I work a lot in Golden Gate Park, and I always stop and tell the gardeners how wonderful the park looks. And so they do sections of the park. They cut down 2 eucalyptus or 3, and then they restore it. But all of the eucalyptus they cut down are stacked until they use them, and they use them to line roads and paths. And they also use them, they like dig a trench and put them in to keep invasive plants from taking over recently restored areas, because it's a great way to block. And I'm looking out on the Burnham Strip right now, and that is a big property that's going to be converted into a park. Maybe we could use some there.
Good idea. All right. I think we're going to have to close this agenda item now. Thank you to Sheena for that presentation, and to everyone else who's made comments and spoken about this tonight.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to engage with everybody. I'm going to just write my email again real quick if you'd like to email me.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Dave, could you make me a co-host? I have one slide to share for this next item. So the next item up on, oh, I am. Okay, got it. Okay. The next item up on the agenda is the website, the MCC website initial exploration. Sorry, my screen is it's so dark in here. Sorry, you can barely see me. So a few weeks ago, I think about a month ago, at an MCC meeting, we talked about the website and the changes that we need to make to improve it. And it's a long project. It's probably going to be done over the next year or so. But we had a few conversations, and thanks to Michelle Dragoni, who introduced us to her website developer, we got in touch and got some initial thoughts from a website developer on what we could potentially do. So this agenda item is just to approve an initial budget of $250 that would be used for an initial exploration on moving the site over from its existing Squarespace page to potentially WordPress. And so I have one slide that I'll share right now, which would be kind of the outline of the initial scope. So, and this came out of a couple conversations. We are still, so actually update since the last meeting. We talked about a group of 3 of us working on this, which was initially myself, Greg, and Dave. But Dave, I believe you want to step away from this. So Len is going to take your place in that. But before that transition happened, you did have a conversation to give some background information to this potential developer about the site, how it's built, and one specific thing that's at the bottom of this list on the SSL. Right now, our site, you get warnings sometimes when you go to it that it's not secure, and so that's one potential improvement that we could make to the site, even in the interim before we switch over to a new site, is to improve that. So, but I know you had tried to work on that before, Dave, and there was something that broke as a result of that. So this initial scope would basically include testing. So our site's built on Squarespace. WordPress is a potential option for where we could move the site to. WordPress is typically used for a lot of different sites, especially those that are like very blog focused. So focus on blog or news updates on a regular basis. And so there is potentially a plugin or a built-in export that we could use to export all of our posts over from the existing site over to a new site. And then I think there's a typo here, but basically to also move over a lot of our existing. So we have basically two things. We have a bunch of blog posts and we have a lot of files. And so to move, there's a plugin that might work to help us move over those files as well. And so if we're able to do those two things, then that would save probably tens of hours of time that could, potentially even more, that otherwise we would have to manually move things over. So this initial project would just be $250 to do the things on this list, which are the things that, testing to see if there is an easy solution to move things over, plus a cost analysis of the top 4 or 5 cloud storage options. So that's one of the issues with our site now, is that we have so many files, thanks to Lisa Ketchum, who went through and scanned boxes and boxes of papers, put them all on the site so they're easy to access. When we move over to a new site, we're going to have to store those files somewhere. And so one potential option is to have a separate cloud storage place for those files, and to evaluate, part of this initial scope would be to evaluate what our options are there. So that is all, that's all kind of I have to share tonight, but I'm happy to take any questions, starting with Dave.
So the issue with SSL is that Squarespace 5 doesn't support it, or at least it didn't in 2016 when we last tried to enable it.
Got it.
And the built-in export for posts on Squarespace does work. I've used it. I've not actually tried to import it onto WordPress, but it's, it's a straight XML export. It'd be pretty surprising if it didn't work. The upload, I imagine it's probably trying to do the same thing I did, which is I watched the entire website through all of its links. It's like a 25-hour process. It worked to create a backup, so it might work to create a new WordPress site. But it's not at all clear to me that we want to create a new site that way. In fact, it's very clear to me that we do not want to create a new website that way. So I don't think that that is worth testing. The blog part, yes. Files, no. Images, maybe. Small numbers of images, but like the ones that are used for the actual web appearance, but certainly not all the hundreds of megabytes of images we have that are on the website.
Can you clarify what you mean by we don't want to create a website that way? What do you mean? Which way? What are you talking
I
about?
don't want to create a new website that's essentially a mirror of our existing website. I think that we were somewhat forced into what we have today by what Squarespace offered, and the fact that the world has moved on significantly since then for storage options. So I think it would be a horrible mistake to just take the existing website and just move it to WordPress.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there are many other things, and this is what's going to come out of this next step, which is for the 3 of us on this committee plus Lisa Ketchum to meet and talk about what our requirements are. Yeah, like for example, our existing site's not mobile optimized. We need a mobile optimized site, considering almost all of us, access this from our phones. I would agreed that we don't just want to duplicate the existing site. There may be some pages of the site that are that we do want to just replicate, and it would be good to make sure that that can be done on an an efficient efficient way. But yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
What,
so anyway, so I basically support the allocation of the funds I'm hoping it won't cost full 250, but it's a reasonable amount to allocate.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Next, Greg.
I support the project, of course. I'm curious about the cost analysis of cloud storage, because that segues into what are we paying for the current? I mean, do we get storage for free? Or, I mean, I don't understand the significance of that. I do endorse the idea, at least from a point of view of expediency, of testing it on WordPress, because it's kind of like the IBM of website technology. I mean, all kinds of people use them. There's a million plugins and extras you can get, most of them for free. Just about anything you want to do can be supported. I do think we need to evaluate, though, the maintainability by us without professional help of the website is part of the effort. So Dave, to your point about do we do all the pages, I don't care. For 4 hours, I'd like to see what happens. And then I'd like to go in and see how I could maybe maintain that or not. That would tell me something about whether or not WordPress was a good landing spot in terms of the council members being able to maintain this going forward. I do appreciate most of every other comment you guys made about we don't want to just duplicate the site. But I just want to register as an old guy. I have never accessed the MCC website on my phone, and I never will.
Yeah. Well, part of that is it is a pain. So yes, Squarespace 5 gave you quote unquote unlimited storage space. None of the later versions did.
Okay, thanks for that. Len, I'll go to you next.
Yes, are you looking to have a motion to approve this expenditure as part of this agenda item?
Yes, I believe that's what we need, right? An emotion and a vote.
Okay, so
I move we approve this expenditure.
Second.
Okay, took care of that.
Thank you. Does anyone else, either on the council or in the public, want to comment on this before we move ahead to a vote? I don't see anyone except Glenn, your hand is still raised.
So, yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are we going to put some kind of a time frame on how Robin works on this, or prioritize which ones come first? It doesn't affect
certainly
the motion.
Do that.
I'm
happy to have your input. Yeah, it's basically like 4 hours of her time. So we can prioritize how to use that. And how, yeah, do you want to go ahead and give input on how you would?
No, I think I already, my major thing is make the whole files thing last, concentrate on appearance, everything else first. But I think that's up to you guys. I think it would be a good idea because I've been a web developer, I've hired web developers, and if you don't give priorities, then you get what you get, not what you really wanted. and Robin is good, but I just think it would be a good idea.
Agreed. Okay. All right, I don't see any other hands raised, so let's go ahead and take a vote. Dave, would you please call the roll?
Dan? Dan? Okay, we'll skip Dan.
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Len?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And yes, so it passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So that is our last regular agenda item tonight. I'm going to move on to item 5, which is council activity. Sorry, I'm still here, but it's too dark apparently. Can anyone, does anyone have any items that they want to share during under council activity? Len, I'll go to you first.
Yes, I have two items. I've been in touch with Caltrans about the Virginia crosswalk. There are 3 different parties involved now, but the local engineer has been on vacation the last 2 weeks. He just returned. So I'll have an update. With regard to the large signs, the lease of those ran out and they're looking into getting a new lease for new signs. That's why they're not here. And so I expect to have more details for our next meeting. The second one is I did talk to MROSD about what they're doing as they manage a large number of parks, et cetera. So I've got good information there, and I plan to pass it on to Sheena if she doesn't have it already. But, nothing in particular I wanted to bring out now.
Okay, next I'll go to Claire.
Question for Len. At the last meeting, Dan and I were discussing whatever was being built next to that crosswalk. Whatever it is continues to be built. I'm still assuming that it's the electrical equipment for these flashers. Is that correct?
I did go through the presentation that Caltrans made to us last November, and it did include a diagram which represented those types of features on the crosswalk itself. So they're within the plan they presented us last November.
Okay, it looks like there's electrical.
Yeah, there
going
is.
on both sides of the street. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, and next I'll go to Greg.
I'm just about to paste something into the text. The local hazard mitigation plan, as Lena mentioned, is out. There's a meeting tomorrow. In the chat is a link for you to register if you're interested in attending it. I will be taking responsibility for trying to keep up with this thing. It's hundreds of pages long. And I don't have anything major to say at this point in time, but I can tell you that I'm in touch with 70 to 100 different people in Pacifica on a variety of matters. They are not happy with it. So I can't yet make that statement. But I think a critical review of local hazard mitigation plan is merited by everybody who has time. And if you have a specific city like Half Moon Bay or El Granada, I encourage you to take a look at it. The drought issue, obviously continues. I spoke to the president of the Tuolumne River Trust, and I'm exploring having a panel session with him and the president of BOSQA, or maybe Steve Ritchie from SFPUC, because there's a debate about what the real impact of that is. And you may remember, we're talking about a 50, 59, 67% cutback in the third year of a drought. So it's potentially pretty significant. That kind of a panel discussion I might be doing at the MIT Energy and Environment thing. If you're interested in having them try and come talk to the MCC, let me know. But I think a broader forum might be more appealing. On SAM, you probably saw the article in the Half Moon Bay Review. I am not sure the factual basis for that article about the breweries. Of course, it's been a suspicion of mine. It's sort of logical. And there was a report given by Brown and Caldwell, the expenses of $500,000 to $1 million or so to deal with the biological oxygen demand spike. My personal favorite theory on what happened is that we added one too many breweries, and it's a case of cumulative impacts. Every individual brewery may feel, they're not responsible, they haven't changed anything, but we just added one too many properties that had some BOD issues, and I don't know whether it was a restaurant or what. That, coupled with the fact that this is the driest year in 1,200 to 1,500 years, which has reduced the flows to the sewers, probably increased the concentration. So that's my theory. But we do have an issue at SAM, and it'll be worth watching because we're violating the discharge quite frequently. I've also attended some meetings with citizens and mayors and council persons of cities and towns in the peninsula. You may or may not be aware of Senate Bills 9 and 10, which are going to increase density of housing without any affordable housing benefit. And in fact, if we add that kind of density to the population, it's going to markedly increase the cost of water, which you heard me talk about before, and decrease the affordability for everybody here. So in my personal opinion, you should write your council member and say what you think about SB 9 and 10. I personally am going to say to my state senator or some of them, don't you dare do this. This is terrible. We're already above carrying capacity. Wait until you figure out how much water we have, and then figure out how much to charge anybody else who comes in. And then finally, on Montero Water and Sanitary District, they haven't had an official board meeting for a while, but they did get a response to Caltrans from Caltrans. They wrote a letter asking Caltrans to either do something about the highway bypass. I think it's called the Martini Creek Highway Bypass, which is where the highway was going to go. Caltrans wrote back and said, yeah, we're going to thin some trees, but nothing about removal of eucalyptus. They're refusing to do anything about the abandoned house that some residents have mentioned to me that's a potential flashpoint on Hawthorne and Fir, I think is the address. And they said, we'd love to give you the property, Montero Water and Sanitary District, but right now, essentially you're blocked by the county. They need to get the county to approve something. My understanding is they tried that a while back and Half Moon Bay blocked it for some reason. I don't have that in writing. So we don't really have any action on the Caltrans bypass right away fire risk yet, except for thinning, which, you know, I don't think is a big help given the density of the eucalyptus there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Greg. I see Michelle Dragoni has her hand raised, so we can go ahead and have her if she has a question or comment.
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
It's not the breweries. Their output is 60% less than what they would normally have done. And if you listen to the SAM meeting, which I will post on Coastside Buzz, they're not producing very much. So there's two things about the BOD. The BOD you have to understand is it's a ratio. So when you have less water running through your system, the ratio of bacteria, et cetera, is going to be greater. And so that's
Michelle, sorry, this is like not, I thought you had a question
all right
for someone, but as part of, we're talking about council activity. I think this type of comment might be better off in like public comment.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off, and feel free to type what you want in chat.
Sure, we'll do.
Okay. I'll go to Dave next.
Yeah, not much. I did want to mention that we had received a third Public Records Act request for information on Upper Miramar, this time from a law firm. Judging by what they're asking for, probably a law firm hired by one of the other neighbors, but I don't know that for sure. I have not yet been able to respond to that because of personal business, but they know it's being delayed.
Okay, thanks for letting us know about that. Dan?
Yeah, I just want to report on council activity. Last night, the Simpson County Harbor District hosted the second master plan development workshop, and basically took some polls from the participants and is moving forward. So just wanted to, I guess, report, but also encourage community members to participate in the San Mateo County Harbor District Master Plan workshops.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I was just going to report on a meeting that I had, and Claire attended as well. I mentioned this at a previous meeting, but we're basically the unincorporated community councils in San Mateo County, which include the MCC as well as North Fair Oaks and the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council. Just a couple representatives from each of those got together to just discuss kind of issues that we all face, just to really create a line of communication among the three councils of unincorporated San Mateo County. So it was just an introductory call. We didn't tackle any specific topics, but I wanted to mention that. Any other council activity? Okay, let's move on to future agendas. So as you'll note, this agenda was relatively light. We didn't have a lot of items to talk about. I similarly don't have a lot currently planned for the second agenda in August, which will be on the 25th, other than hybrid meeting planning, which is something we need to discuss. I'm hoping that hybrid meetings do not need to start October 1st, but we'll see. And it's also good to just have that planned out for when it does happen. But I strongly encourage anyone on the council. I know there are a lot of topics that were mentioned both tonight and that we've talked about at several meetings, to please approach me if you want any agenda items. I mean, I'm hoping we can get a couple additional items for the meeting on the 25th. Especially, I mean, there are a lot of topics regarding wildfires. Some stuff came up tonight as well around potentially PG&E and wires underground, or other wildfire topics or other unrelated to wildfire topics. So please go ahead, either share tonight, right now, or email me. And I would also ask that if you do want something on the agenda, please try to email it to me at least, a week in advance of our agenda, of our meeting date. Okay, Len, did you have something?
With regard to the Virginia crosswalk, I plan to follow up as I indicated, but I'm hopeful that they'll be close enough to deployment that they could be on the first meeting in September.
Okay, and that would be to have Caltrans come and speak at that meeting?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay, that would be great. So you'll work on arranging that?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they want to propose for either the second meeting in August or a September meeting?
Great. Then you're ready for a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I would just note that if I don't, I actually want to just discuss this quickly. If I don't have any other topics for August 25th, I don't know that we even want to hold a meeting that's only about hybrid meetings.
I think we should, because I think it's going to be mostly a discussion topic. And if we don't have anything else on the agenda, then we'll have plenty of chances for people to get their opinions out. I know that some of the other bodies on the coast, GCSD, for example, are also looking into hybrid meetings. So I think it would be a good topic, even if that's the only topic on the agenda.
Okay, we could have a really short meeting then. Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. I just wanted to gather people's takes, since it is, I usually try to put, in the beginning of the year, we were struggling to cut down the agendas to 3 topics, and now I'm kind of struggling to get 2 or 3 on the agendas. I mean, I know there's a lot that people want to bring forward, but it also takes effort from people on the council as well. So, Jill, you wanted to say something?
I would like to group things together to be more effective with our time. So for me to meet for just one item, I would rather just push it to the next meeting.
The problem with that is you don't know what'll come up for the next agenda, and then you could have a long agenda again. So, and for those who are new on the council or relatively new, we've always, all bodies have smaller agendas in the summer, and that's just fine.
Well, the issue is, okay, yes, we can all meet again, but is it for information or is it for voting? Because it is summer, so it is nice to have maybe a week off from the MCC. I'm okay with that, rather than meet for one agenda item. It's not a rush. We have time.
No, it's not. It is a rush. We don't have time. September 30th is the deadline.
We got
So
plenty of time.
that's not if we end up with a lot of agenda items in September, which is quite likely.
I'll risk
Okay,
it.
let's hear from Claire, and then if it, and we can potentially hear from everyone on this topic. But Claire, go ahead.
I think this may be the first year that I've been here that we have not skipped a meeting at all. I don't think we have. And we usually do at least once or twice during the year. So, I leave it up to Michelle. If a lot of things come in between now and then and you want to have a meeting, great. If you feel like it's not what you want to do, it's fine with me to skip it.
I think
Up to
that
you.
Dave is trying to do something that's important and he would benefit by having the meeting. It's a meeting that I think if a council member was on vacation or whatever, they could do that. And as long as we have a quorum, he can have an effective discussion.
Yeah, it's true. We don't need to have everybody there.
Okay. Greg?
I would second two things here. I would agree with leave it up to Michelle, but I also see what Dave is trying to do here. He's trying to avoid having an emergency later. And I'm afraid unless we get some signal that the Brown Act is going to be rationalized and deferred, we might be better off getting that behind us. Maybe we could take off the first meeting in September instead. I don't know. Michelle, it's up to you.
Okay.
Well, I tend to, my personal opinion is that it will probably change. I mean, case counts are rising. I don't think anyone's going to expect us to have an in-person meeting if, if we still have a lot of COVID cases. I certainly won't be attending one with 2 unvaccinated children. So, I don't think it's as much of an urgent issue as being said. And I really do want to encourage other people on the council to bring forward issues because it's really important. Greg has mentioned just in a direct message about the wildfire issues list. And I know we've gone through that several times, but we have a lot of issues on that list that we need to advance. And so I don't want to have just that topic of reviewing the list as an agenda item any longer. We've already kind of gone through, I think we have a really good list of things, but there are a lot of individual things that can be advanced. So I would really encourage people on the council to even take a look at that issues list and pick up one of those things and grab a couple other people on the council and try to advance that. If that happens before the next meeting, then I'd say we will hold that meeting. If it doesn't, I think we can push the hybrid meeting discussion to the first meeting in September. Looking at the calendar, the first Wednesday the first is actually the first Wednesday on the month. So we have the 8th. So it's still fairly early in the month that we will have that meeting. So that's my personal take on that. So just a little motivation to people to try to come up with some issues that they'd like to address. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, call the roll, please, Dave.
Ann,
Yes.
Jill,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Dave, yes. We
All right.
are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Okay, good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Good night, everyone.